How's your heart today? Tonight's letters are for anyone who has looked at someone they love and quietly wondered when the familiarity began to thin out. Not because of one terrible moment, but because life kept moving in small, ordinary ways until the person in front of you no longer felt easy to reach. Sometimes no one does anything wrong. Sometimes people just get tired, practical, busy, careful. These stories are about that kind of distance, the soft kind that still hurts. And if you've been carrying the grief of loving someone who is still here but no longer feels close, I hope this leaves you feeling a little less alone. Later 1. I knew my father was becoming a stranger the day he asked if I still took sugar in my coffee. We were in my parents' kitchen on a Sunday morning. The kettle was warming. My overnight bag was still by the table. My mother was upstairs folding laundry. It should have felt completely familiar. Instead, I stood there for a second because I haven't taken sugar in my coffee since I was 22. I'm 30 now. He nodded when I said no, like he had missed a few chapters and knew it. And the strange thing is, my father is not an unloving man. He has always been steady, in quiet ways. He changes light bulbs before anyone asks. He leaves cut fruit beside your plate. He notices if the tires need air, if the gate sticks, if the dog bowl is empty. He has never been good with big speeches, but for most of my life, I understood his language perfectly. Now when I come home, we do well in practical conversation. He asks about traffic. I ask about the leak in the back bathroom. He tells me the neighbor finally cut down that messy tree. I tell him rent has gone up again. We stand beside each other and talk like two decent people sharing an elevator. Nothing is wrong. That is what makes it so hard to explain. Last winter, my mother sent me a photo of him asleep in the living room with the television still on and his reading glasses slipping down his face. I laughed when I saw it. Then I stared at it too long. He looked older than I was ready for. Not fragile, just farther away. I realized I knew more about people I listened to online than I knew about what my father thinks about these days when he sits alone after dinner. A few months ago, he called while I was in the grocery store. He wanted the name of a restaurant near my apartment because he and my mother had a medical appointment in the city and planned to eat nearby after. I told him the name. He repeated it twice so he would remember. Then he paused and said, "You sound tired." I laughed and gave him my usual answer. "Work's just busy." He said, "You always say that." I was standing in front of pasta sauce, and that sentence nearly undid me. Because he was right. I do always say that. I have been giving him summaries instead of my life. Clean little updates. Work is busy. I'm fine. Everything's good. Maybe part of why he feels unfamiliar now is that I spent years editing myself into someone easy to report on. When my parents came to the city, we had lunch after the appointment. My mother filled most of the silence, as she always does. Then she went to the restroom, and my father looked at me and asked, "Are you happy here?" Not "How's work?" Not "Are you still busy?" Just that. I said, "Most of the time," and hated how incomplete it sounded. Later that week, I kept thinking about how I had assumed love could survive on good intentions, holiday visits, and not saying anything cruel. But distance does not always arrive like a storm. Sometimes it arrives dressed as adulthood. Sometimes it sounds like, "I didn't want to bother you." Sometimes it looks like your father not knowing your coffee anymore because both of you stopped bringing your real selves into the room. So I've been trying something different. I call before I'm polished. I ask longer questions. I let silences stay. Last week he told me about the first apartment he and my mother rented after they got married. The ceiling leaked when it rained. They used upside-down crates as a table for months. I had never heard that story before, and for a moment, I could hear the younger version of him, still there behind all the practical talk. I still don't know exactly when he became harder to reach. But maybe the truer thing is this. He became a stranger slowly, and so did I. And maybe love, at this age, is learning how to meet again. Post-transition, some distance can live inside a loving home for years. Sometimes the first step back is simply asking a better question. Letter 2. We never had one final fight. That is what made losing her so confusing. If someone had cheated, shouted, or slammed a door, I think I would have known where to place the pain. Instead, what happened between us was softer than that. Softer, and somehow harder to grieve. She was my closest friend for almost 8 years. We met at work when we were both pretending not to be overwhelmed. She used to leave notes on my desk after rough meetings. Once, when I cried in the office bathroom because I felt like I was failing at everything, she handed me a paper cup of terrible vending machine hot chocolate and said, "You don't have to be impressive every day." For a long time, she was the first person I told things to. New apartment, bad date, my mother's health scare, the haircut I regretted, the promotion I didn't know how to celebrate because it came with more money and less sleep. She knew which version of me was joking and which version needed someone to stay on the phone a little longer. Then the shift started so quietly, I almost respected it for how invisible it was. She took longer to reply. Then I did the same because I didn't want to seem needy. We rescheduled dinner once, then twice, then so often that our chat became full of apologies and screenshots of calendars. There was no cruelty in it. We were just two women in our 30s trying to be competent at work, available to family, careful with money, rested enough, healthy enough. Friendship got pushed to the edge of the table with everything else we promised to return to later. When we did meet up, it still felt good. We could still laugh. We still knew each other's stories. So I told myself nothing was wrong. I told myself adulthood just looked like this now. Then one evening I sent her a voice note after a bad day. I had just come home from the hospital after visiting my aunt, and my apartment felt too quiet. I stood in the kitchen, still wearing my outside clothes, staring at the dishes in the sink, and I said, "I don't need advice. I just don't want to feel alone for 5 minutes." She listened to it. I could see that she listened to it. She replied the next morning, "Sorry, I fell asleep. Hope today is better." That should have been a small thing. Maybe it was, but it landed somewhere tender. Not because she owed me perfect availability, but because for the first time I thought, oh, I don't live in your reflexes anymore. After that, I became careful. I told her funny things, light things, restaurant recommendations. I stopped reaching for her first. She probably felt that change too and answered it in her own way. I think that is how people drift. One person reaches less because it hurts. The other senses the distance and reaches less too. Soon both are being polite with a relationship that used to hold more weight. The moment that broke my heart was embarrassingly small. It was my birthday. Not a milestone, just another year. I spent the day answering emails, pretending I didn't mind it landing on a weekday. My family called. Coworkers bought me a slice of cake. She texted at 8:40 that night. "Happy birthday. Hope you had the best day." And a balloon emoji. I stared at it because for years, she had been the one who called at midnight. She used to say birthdays deserved at least one voice, not just a screen. I typed, "Thank you," then deleted it. Typed, "Miss you," then deleted that too. In the end, I sent a heart and put my phone face down on the table. That was the night I understood something I had been resisting for months. You can miss someone deeply and still be living in a version of the relationship that no longer exists. We met a few weeks later. We hugged. We talked about work, rising rent, her brother's new baby, my plan to repaint the bedroom. Everything was pleasant. That almost made it sadder. She looked the same. Her laugh was the same. But the years we once narrated to each other in real time had turned into summaries. I still have our old messages. Sometimes I scroll too far back and find a version of us making plans with reckless confidence, certain we would stay central in each other's lives. I don't do that often anymore. Not because I stopped caring, but because I finally understand that grief can exist without blame. If I could say one honest thing to her now, it would be this. I don't resent you for changing. I only wish I had noticed sooner that we were disappearing in slow motion. And maybe the saddest part is not that we became strangers. It's that we did it while still calling each other dear. Post transition. Not every goodbye is spoken out loud. Some people leave your daily life so gradually that your heart notices before your calendar does. Letter 3. The hardest stranger to name was the person I almost married. For a long time, I didn't call it loss because technically no one left me. We still text sometimes. We still ask about each other's parents. If we passed each other in a bookstore, we would probably smile in that careful way people do when they once knew too much. But there are kinds of closeness that do not survive being reduced to politeness, and ours is one of them. We were together for 5 years, long enough that our lives learned each other's rhythms. He knew I slept better with one foot outside the blanket. I knew he always rinsed a glass before using it, even if it had just come from the cupboard. Our relationship lived in ordinary things: grocery lists, pharmacy runs, reminders to bring an umbrella, Sunday eggs, changing the bed sheets, asking if the other person got home safe. I thought that kind of love was solid because it was not loud. Then life started pressing in from different directions. His hours got longer. My mother got sick for a season and needed more help than she wanted to admit. We became efficient, responsible, useful. We remembered birthdays, paid bills, bought detergent, sat through family dinners, kept the apartment running. From the outside, we looked fine. The truth is, no one teaches you how to recognize emotional distance when the relationship still looks fine from across the room. One night in late autumn, I came home after visiting my mother. I was exhausted in that dull, bone-deep way that makes even taking off your shoes feel like another task. He was at the table with his laptop open, half working, half scrolling. The apartment smelled like reheated soup. I sat across from him and said, "Can I tell you something without you trying to fix it?" He looked up and said, "Of course." So I told him I was scared. Scared of how quickly time was moving. Scared of my mother getting older. Scared of becoming the kind of person who kept functioning, but stopped feeling present in her own life. I wasn't crying. I wasn't dramatic. I was just finally telling the truth in complete sentences. He listened. Then he squeezed my hand once and said, "You worry too much. Things will settle down after this month." He meant well, I know that. But something in me went quiet. It wasn't that he said the worst thing. It was that he answered the surface of what I said and missed the person underneath it. In that moment, I felt lonelier with him than I would have felt by myself. And once you feel that a few times, something changes. You begin speaking less honestly because being partially received is its own kind of exhaustion. After that, I became easier to live with, which is another way of saying I became less known. We still had good days. We still watched shows on the couch. We still argued lightly over what to order on Fridays. Nothing dramatic happened. But the relationship started to feel like a room where all the furniture was still there, only the warmth had gone out of it. When we finally ended things, even that was quiet. No betrayal, no explosion. Just two tired people admitting that love had started to feel like maintenance. I packed books, mugs, chargers, all those little pieces of routine. He carried the box down to the car. Before I got in, he said, "I hope we can still be in each other's lives." At the time, it sounded generous. Now it sounds like the only sentence available. When neither of us knew how to name what had already been gone for a while. Months later, he texted on my birthday, then at New Year's, then once to ask if I still had his spare key, though I think we both knew that could have been a shorter conversation. Every exchange was gentle. Every exchange confirmed the same thing. We had become careful with each other in places where we used to be natural. The part I carry now is not the breakup itself. It is the mystery of when the person who knew the private map of my face became someone I had to explain myself to. When the one who could tell from the sound of my keys hitting the table that I'd had a bad day became the one who said, "You're probably just tired." I don't think he failed me. I think we both got overwhelmed by life and started bringing each other our most manageable selves. Manageable selves can keep a household running for a long time. They just cannot keep intimacy alive forever. If I could send him one last unsent sentence, it would not be angry. It would simply be this: I knew we were in trouble the first time. I felt more understood by silence than by your reply. And I still don't know whether that was the beginning of the end, or just the moment I finally admitted, "You were no longer home to me." Host closing. Maybe that is one of adulthood's quieter griefs. Realizing that people do not always leave all at once. Sometimes they stay in your contacts, in your holiday plans, in old routines, and still become harder to reach where it matters most. If tonight's letters felt familiar, I hope they also reminded you that distance is not proof that your love was small. It may simply mean life went unspoken for too long. If someone came to mind while you listened, maybe this is your gentle nudge to ask one more real question, or answer one a little more honestly. And if no one comes back, I still hope your heart leaves here feeling understood, softer with itself, and a little less alone.